Hello, everybody. It is Bernard Fields. I'm your multimedia specialist, and tonight we're going to have episode, I believe, number 13 of the DVA Google Hangouts. But first, let me go ahead before we dive further in. Let me just go ahead and say this. Because we're trying to grow a bigger audience, there's a possibility that there's going to be a name change. And that's a small, minor detail, but at the same time, it's going to be a benefit to the whole graphic design community. And at the same time, we're not going to be changing any time schedule. So for the most part, we're going to still be having our Hangouts here, our Google Hangouts, every Wednesday night from 9 o'clock until 10. And we're going to cover all types of topics, techniques, and tutorials and things of that nature, things that pertain to us, the graphic designer. So we have some available seats open. We have people who come in live every week. We sometimes even have highlighted artists that we bring in, and we talk to them about what it is that they do for our company, freelance, and we have Q&A. It's just a really good time for you, the viewer, designer, or even if you're a client that's watching, for you just to get an inside look on what goes on in the world of graphic designers. So I want to give a shout out to Jason. He is joining us, and we're also going to have other people who are going to be coming in too. They're all members of, for the most part, of DVA. And also want to give a shout out to Roberto Blake and the people of Create Awesome. I just joined that group not too long ago on Facebook, and trust me, they live up to the name. They have some awesome people in there, inspiration, designs, just through the roof. And I just love being part of the DVA and also Create Awesome. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in the topic. So tonight's topic, we're talking about setting your rates. Now, this is something that comes up on a regular basis. And the way I look at it is kind of like growth spurts, or times in which you're trying to expand your brand, but more on a financial tip. So when it comes to setting your rates, there are a couple of things that you want to keep in mind, and we're going to cover those things right now. So if you just give me a moment here, I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to jump into this PowerPoint-like presentation, but it's with Keynote. And I'm going to jump in this. And this is the opening scene here. As you can see here, I just put it there. It's Wednesday night at 9. And then this is episode number 13, and we're setting our rates. All right, so this is what you have. You have flat versus hourly. This is what it all boils down to. Flat versus hourly, and we're talking about money and setting your rates. So what you have to do is choose between the two. You have to choose flat or hourly billing. Okay, and the first step in determining your fee structure is deciding whether a flat rate or an hourly billing system is right for you. Let's look at the hourly rate. Okay, you have to make sure you're aware of your client's budget. Assure you'll stay within their budget. This will help you determine a proper quote and if this will work to your benefit. You don't want to eat a ton of hours. Now, what does that mean? That basically means that, let's say, for example, that you have a client and they have a budget of $100 and they want this flyer to be done. Okay, now let's say that your hourly rate is $20 an hour. Okay, now I know that may be low, but let's just say that it's $20 an hour. Okay, that means that you're gonna give this person 5 hours worth of work. Now, if you go over 1 hour, that's what we consider to be eating an hour. You're just eating 1 hour. But if you do not properly quote them, you could possibly find yourself eating more hours, and that's like going over half of what you've already quoted them for. So for example, instead of it being 5 hours and you're done with the project and you get your pay, you went like 3 or 4 hours, or even worse, you doubled and went complete 5. You're eating those hours without charging them. Now the flat rate, let's take a look at that. When it comes to the flat rate, you have to make sure you're aware of your client's budget. Again, that is very, very important. You have to stay within their budget without room to add on. You can eat tons of hours this way. Let me explain to you. Again, the reason why we ask the client for their budget is because it allows you to be able to gauge how well you're doing within your own personal business and the turnaround time and all of that other good stuff that we'll get into that in a little bit. But you have to stay within the budget, and there's no room for you to add on, meaning that if, let's say, for example, the same flyer that you're going to design for $100, that's your flat rate. If this person says, okay, well, it's going to take 5 hours for this to be done. Okay, that works out within reason, because then if you break it down, it's $20 an hour. But let's just say that because you're not doing an hourly rate, you're doing a flat rate, that this person is taking more of your time. And let's say that they took 10 hours to get this poster / flyer, whatever it is, done. You break that down, you've only made $10 an hour. That's eating a ton of hours. You do not want to be working for $10 an hour at a flat rate, whether you're freelance or if you're working for a firm. You just do not want to do that. Okay, so that moves us on to dealing with quotes, contracts, and these things are a must. You must have these things. Stress the importance of communicating policies before the project kicks off. Even though most clients nod their head and tend to ignore the information, putting things in writing always helps. And I'll just say for me, it is a must. I reiterate that. It's not that it always helps, it's a must have, because therefore you're not in the dark and your potential client is not in the dark. And as I have right here, it says that that sometimes they just kind of ignore you, or they have their head nodding and they're like, yeah, let's get down, down to business. I want this work to be done. There you have to have them sign a contract, because that protects yourself more than anything. It protects the client also to make sure that you uphold your end of the bargain, but you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself, because if not, then you could run into things such as a person going well over the hours and you're eating a ton and you have no contract in place. You're going to get burned, and there's nothing that you can take them to court on or be able to hold their feet to the fire when it comes to having a quote or a contract. And also, let's go ahead and let's talk about some of these policies. Okay, this is what you would have for an hourly rate contract or a quote clause. This is like one of those things that will really, really help you out when it comes to writing up your contract. It says right here, for an example, and I will have this posted up. If you want to copy paste this down, I'll make sure I have this within the YouTube description. It says right here, our quote is an estimate based on an hourly rate. If your project goes over budget, we will be billing you at X amount of dollars an hour. We are going to work very hard to stay on budget. Our quoting is typically very accurate, but you need to be aware of this policy. Now, when you're upfront with the client and you let them know this, that kind of gives them the sense of, number one, that you mean business. And then number two, it keeps them very aware of the possibility that you could be charging a little bit more because of the amount of detail they may want within whatever the project may be. And if they don't want to go over that budget, then they have to be careful with their selections, and they have to be very intentional when it comes to giving clear-cut, clean direction as to what they want exactly. Okay, let's go ahead and let's look at the flat rate contract / quote clause. Here's just an example. It says your project comes to a total of X amount of dollars. During the production process, you are permitted X amount of changes. Any changes after the allotted amount moves us into our hourly rate of X amount of dollars per hour. Typically, our clients approve within X changes, but you need to be aware of this policy. Again, this is to protect you. If you don't have verbiage like this within your contract, there's a great chance that you can possibly get burned. Okay, and the key thing in here is that you're dealing with a flat rate, but look where it says any changes after the allotted amount moves us into our hourly rate of X amount of dollars. You want to make sure that you have that broke down for yourself privately to kind of understand, like let's say again, for example, that flyer that's for $100. If the flat rate is 100, if you want to break this down into hours, then you want to say, okay, I'm okay with $20 an hour. Then you can put that in there. This moves us into our hourly rate of $20 per hour. Okay, and again, this is to protect you because you're telling them that you permitted a amount of changes, and once they go past that change, then you're moving into the hourly rate. And this leaves you guys both in the light. Nobody is in the dark. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at freelance versus firm or in being an employee. You want to count the costs. You want to look at the pros and cons of both sides. So let's go ahead and let's look at the pros and cons first of being a freelancer. Freelance pros. Number one, you work for yourself. That's big time. Number two, you set your own hours. You set your rates and your pace, and you are the boss. You are like a boss. So when you're working for yourself, I mean, who doesn't want to do that? Because everything else underneath is like, it falls underneath the umbrella. You get to set your own hours, which means that if you want to wake up a little late, you want to be having a lazy day, you get your own vacation, whatever, that's totally up to you. And we're going to see also a little further on just how your hours being a freelancer are just really like ridiculously flexible, especially like if you have a good rate set for yourself. Okay, speaking of, you set your own rates and your pace. So you work at your own pace. You have to be responsible to be able to do this, because if you're not responsible, then you're going to be like a Michael Scott type of a boss, which you don't necessarily want to be that. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some of the freelance cons. You have droughts. Okay, we have moments where it's like you're on the top of the mountain and everything is all good, and you find yourself in a valley and it's just dry land, and it's parched, and you see skeletons laying all over the place, and you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna die here. Droughts is just nastiness. And also the hustle, the struggle is real, people. It is real. It just does not stop. You have to constantly market yourself. You have to constantly find out, how am I going to get the next client? So when I'm done with the current one, I have another one to fall on. Okay? And then maintaining health insurance, like that's important. And that also goes within your rates, like finding out exactly how much you're going to charge. There are a number of people that I know who are freelance designers, and they do not have health insurance, or even maintaining health insurance can be very, very, very difficult. Okay, let's look at some of the firm or being an employee. Let's look at some of those pros. You have job security. Job security, not the fact that you can just drive and you do your 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, but the fact that when you get there, there is going to be work for you there. As a designer, it feels good to be able to have a folder handed off to you, or to have an email handed off to you and say, hey, we need for you to work on this project. So that is job security. You have a peace of mind. You're not on the grind. You're not on the hustle. You just kind of show up, clock in, do your job. Health insurance. If you work for a good firm, then you're going to have good health insurance. So that, again, puts your mind at ease. They handle all the expenses for you, and you just pretty much, like I said, you go in and do your job and leave. And you have set hours. That's another pro. It's like you don't have to necessarily try to manage your hours. Things are pretty much blocked out every single day. You know exactly what you're going to do. You know how your lunch is going to be. You know what time you got to be in. You know what time you're going to be out. So you have these set hours. Now, for some people, they may look at that as being a con. They're like, you know what, I don't like being told what to do. But you know what? If the money is right, you just don't mind. You are bought. And then you have a steady paycheck. So along with that job security, you know you're going to get that paycheck every 2 weeks. And it's not like being a freelancer where you have to sometimes hunt down, and I should have put that as one of the cons, is that sometimes you may come across clients who do not want to pay you. and you do the work. But you want to make sure that you have within your contract somewhere, like for myself, it's like 50% upfront and then 50% upon completion, or you have some type of payment plans. Okay. Now let's look at some of the firm cons. The job security, well, that's not a con. Sorry about that. That's a little glitch there. You have health insurance. That's one of the good pros. The rates and pace is determined by a boss. So you're not a boss. And let's say, for example, when it comes time for you to get that raise based upon your performance, if you perform well and you feel like you've done everything you were supposed to do, and your boss may feel otherwise, or your boss feels that you've done it, but your rate didn't go up the way you felt it should, then you're like, I'm totally bummed out, and next thing you know, you are on Craigslist looking for another job. All right, and also the pace is also determined by your boss. They put the schedule in front of you and they say, this is what I need and this is what I need for it to be done. So you have very little, or it's possible that you have very little control over that. And then, of course, I mean, heck, you're not the boss. You're not the boss of yourself. Somebody is ruling over you with an iron fist. Just kidding. Now, let's look at the breakdown. The average cost of a graphic designer. What is the average cost of a graphic designer? $3,500 annual. Let's go ahead and look at that. That's like the base. I've seen some around where they were saying, like, if you're a senior graphic designer, it can be like around 50, maybe 60 annually. But we're just going to go at the introduction level of a graphic designer annually, whether you are a freelancer or you're working for a design firm, in which we're going to go ahead and look at both of those. The average cost of a graphic designer being an employee. Let's look at the number. You have $35,000. Divide that by 52 weeks, and that equals $673 per week. Now, this is not like, after taxes. This is all before taxes and whatever Uncle Sam wants to pull out of your check. It's like, oh, it's not fair because I walk away with $200. Where'd the rest of the $473 go? Jesus, help me. So now you take that $673 and you divide that by the 40 hours, and that equals $16.83 per hour. That is your worth. Now, to people who are freelancers, that may come across as being a shock, because you may be thinking to yourself, like, oh my freaking gosh, like, $16 an hour, or roughly $17 an hour, man, like, that's so inexpensive. I'll say for myself, I am around $50 an hour. That's where I am, okay? But let's continue to keep looking at this. The average cost of a graphic designer as a freelancer. Let's take the same $35,000, divide that by 52 weeks. That's the same $673. Now, when it comes to Uncle Sam and paying up for that, it may not be as much, because, of course, if you want to pay for your own health care, that is totally up to you. And for some people who are freelancers, if you want to pay Uncle Sam, that is totally up to you. But trust me, if you're making $35,000 a year, Uncle Sam is knocking on your door like, yo, what's up? Where's my piece at? So you take that and you divide that by $35 an hour. Okay, this is the difference. Okay, because the average freelancer, they charge roughly around $35 an hour, at least. That's the average, and that equals to about 19 hours, a 19-hour work week. That's what it comes to being. 19 hours. Now, remember before we were talking about the 40-hour work week, and as a freelancer, you get to set your own hours. Yes, if you are charging $35 an hour and you're working on an average of 19 hours a week, and I'm talking about an honest straight, you're getting paid $35 each and every 19-hour per week, then at the end of the year, you're going to make your $35,000. Okay, so the average cost of a graphic designer, freelancer. Okay, we're looking at that, breaking that down. Even further, we know the first line. Let's look at the number, the 673. We're breaking this down to projects now. Let's say that if you were doing the flat rate instead of the hourly rate, the flat rate of $50 an hour, that equals 13 projects per week. 13 projects per week. Okay? Now, if you take those 13 projects per week, you times that to 52 weeks within a year, that equals 676 projects per year as a freelancer. That means that you are crunching out 676 projects a year, 13 projects per week, and on average, roughly about 3 of those projects a day. And that has to be consistent. So here's the solution. You have to pick your lifestyle. And what does that mean? Okay, this is very, very, very important. So listen up, people. You have to figure out the base of your needs and not your wants. Now, a lot of us, we feel like, you know what, man, like one day I'm going to be in this big old house, or I'm going to have this type of car, and I'm going to have these type of clothes, and I'm going to be traveling, and I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z. Some of those things are needs, and some of those things are wants. Do not make the mistake of trying to clump that all together, okay? Let's take a little examples. You have housing. These are your needs. Housing, gas, water, electric. Food, clothing, transportation, because you got to get around. And then key thing, brands aren't that important because we're figuring out our base rate. Again, this is the base. This is like the bare minimum to keep you from living on the streets. You got to figure that out. So this is how we do that. You do the math. You add up all your monthly expenses. Divide that by 4 weeks to get your weekly rate. Divide your weekly rate by the 40 hours to get your hourly rate. This is your worth. And to figure out your annual, take your total monthly expenses and times that by 12 months. I hope that makes sense, and I'll leave that there for a second, and I'll just talk a little bit about that. Once you find out your base typically is low, and again, you're talking about keeping a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food in your mouth, taking care of your utilities, and I would want to say that having some form of communication, that is also a necessity too. That could be internet, that could be your phone, that is also necessary, but it could also turn into a want, because some people may want that, you know, the high gigs and everything else, and it's just ridiculously like high, and it's like, I don't know how to budget, you know, to be able to keep my phone turned on. It's like, well, it's easy. Turn your stuff down from a $90 bill down to 40, or switch, you know, carriers, you know, that type of deal. But you want to work yourself down to a base, and then you start to add on all the extras. These are the wants, people. You have to be realistic and have a plan. Without these two things, your dreams will never become a reality. This is a fact. We can sit and dream all day, because dreams are for free. And when it comes to having I don't know who has the echo, but you might want to turn your microphone off. That'd be cool. Appreciate it. But yes, when it comes to having these dreams, yes, the dreams are free. You don't have to pay for those things. You can dream as big as you want to. But if you don't have a plan, a realistic plan in place, and I'm talking a financial one, like for example, if once you find your base, you want to make sure that you take care of that first. So dream big and never settle for less, but first take care of the realistic needs. That is your base, and your goals first. The goals within inside your needs. Once you're living comfortably within that, then you can go ahead and start adding on the brands. You can go ahead and start building upon that dream, you know, and it will become a reality. But before you can have that big old castle, you got to have the base first. You know, if not, you're building yourself a house that's going to crumble. So here are my final thoughts and tidbits. Here's some of the web references where I got some of the information from. Drawn to Business, of course, that is drawntobusiness.com. Go check that out. I plan on getting that that book soon. Add that to my library. And here's another one: How to Charge for Your Graphic Design Work and Get What You Deserve. Like, that is like super uber important. And this is the link to that. And these are going to be posted in the YouTube description, so guys can look down. You also hit subscribe too, because it pays. And then you have a designer's guide to pricing, and then there is the link to that. And that is it, peeps. That's all I have. I'm gonna go ahead and get it on back over here. And I was just getting blown all types of up. So let's figure out what people have been saying here. And if you guys want to go ahead and chime in, Jason, this is a good time for you to have some comments. Cassandra, good time for you to go ahead and chime in. And let's see about these other people. Oh, okay, cool. All right. Telling people to join in. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm hoping that there will be some Q&A here in a second. If people have questions, if you can leave those in the group chat, that'll be awesome. If you're watching, share this video. It would be greatly appreciated. Like I said, we're going to be doing this every single week. We're going to be having like this 1 hour show. Now, we used to have these shows, these DVA hangouts, and these mugs will go until like, God, the latest I've seen it was 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, like 4 hours. And we used to do it from 8 until, 8 until 10. It was 2 hours. But I decided, you know what, it'll be good to cut this back so that people like you do not get bored and will stay until the very end and get something out of it. So what we decided to do is to move our after-hour conversations into the blab.im. That's something that I just got put onto, and I love it. It gives you a chance to be able to grow your audience, to be able to connect with people that have like minds. So as soon as this closes down, you can probably find us over there on blab.im, or if you have the app on your iPhone. For those who are Android users, sorry, but you can go to the website, or just wait until the app is completed and then it's launched for you guys to join us in our lovely conversations. So yes, that brings us to the end of our show. So we're going to stop broadcast right here and continue talking for a little bit. And then I say by 10 o'clock, head on over to Blab and do a search for, I don't know, we'll just call it DVA Hangout. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. DVA Hangout, go over there on Blab, check us out, and follow us, subscribe. I'm sure you will not be let down week in and week out. And until next time, guys, always put forth your best. All right? Peace.